And give me just a second here. Oh, that helps. And I'm here. And welcome. This is Old School RPG, and today we're going to talk about the War of the Cross Genres. Yes. We got a spectator over there, by the way. Anyway, throughout most of the early period of tabletop role-playing games, mostly, the 70s and most of the 80s, a game was usually just one genre. This was a fantasy game. This was a science fiction game. This was a cat getting up on my shoulder. Really? Anyway, so now there were outliers. For example, Dungeons and Dragons First Edition in the Player's Handbook had rules for psionics, psychic powers as opposed to magic. And the less said about White Plume Mountain, the better. Anyway, what ended up happening was you could pretty much be guaranteed that if you were looking at a science fiction game, everything in that game was going to be science fiction. You're going to have your tech with your tech, your fantasy with your fantasy, your incredible monsters with your incredible monsters, and superheroes. Everyone knew everything goes in superheroes, but that's because that's part of the genre, is that everything goes. Whether it's magic or gods or tech or psychic powers. But again, that is part of the genre. It's not a busting genre. Now, you have to in 1989, a new game came out that didn't so much break genres as blend two of them together. It took the science fiction subgenre of cyberpunk and mixed it with fantasy. This is Shadowrun. The basic concept was that in 2012, which was the end of the Mayan calendar, it turns out that the apocalypse isn't the end of the world, it's the end of a cycle, and magic is returning. And for at least the next few centuries, there's going to be magic and tech coexisting. Also, it had the return of elves. People started turning into dwarves and orcs and trolls. Dragons come back. Some animals mutated into monsters from classical myth, that sort of thing. Needless to say, Shadowrun did it well. It was an original system, and it worked. To the point where Shadowrun recently released their 6th edition. They have been in continuous production ever since, barring a brief gap at the death of FASA, which was the company that ran it, at the end of the millennium. The following year, 2 more games that broke genres decided to make their presence known. The first one we're going to talk about is Rifts. Rifts was by Palladium Games. I mentioned them last time when I was talking about Ninjas and Super Spies. I mentioned them last time when I was talking about Ninjas and Super Spies. And it's the typical Palladium system. They upped the power level by using the Mega Damage system that they had developed for the Robotech game, meaning that some characters are as tough and powerful as full-scale 18-meter-tall mecha. Anyway, In a world that is strongly hinted to be the world from the Palladium horror game Beyond the Supernatural, in the future, a border conflict triggers nuclear war. Almost 1 billion people die. Now, in this world, there is magic. Most people just don't know about it. And when you die, the amount of magic energy you have is doubled and then released into the environment, because the amount of magic energy you have, half of it is keeping your soul in place. Hey. So, all of the magical energy, or PPE, potential psychic energy, yes, Palladium uses psychic energy for magic and inner strength points for psychics. Anyway, all of it's released into the environment. Now, there are things called ley lines, and that's a concept that well predates rifts. And these become supercharged, filled with energy. And at the nexi, or nexuses, where they cross, or where multiple meet, the intense buildup of energy is so great, it rips open holes in reality, and things start coming out. And kill even more people. If I remember correctly, by the time it's all said and done, after a global population in this alternate future of 12 billion, there are less than 1 billion left. And it takes a couple centuries, but eventually everything dies down. And the Earth has the remnants of the high-tech from the old world, new high-tech from other dimensions and aliens, new high-tech developed by new companies in areas like the New German Republic and Japan, magic wielders, psychics, mutants, aliens, demons, the whole 9 yards, all of them on Earth. Because with all of these gates, we've become an interdimensional roadway. It's got horror, science fiction, fantasy, even superheroes can make their appearance in Rift's Earth. And I don't believe it's had a revised system yet, but it has had books in continuous production as supplements for the game ever since. Finally, also in 1990, Torg. I forget exactly what Torg stood for, but the concept is, during a great conjunction or something like that, hundreds or dozens or however many parallel Earths overlap each other in like 6-dimensional space, causing the whole thing to shatter into hexes. Each hex, roughly, is a different reality overlapping into ours with different laws of physics, different history, different everything. So, for example, down in Southern Europe, you have the cyber papacy, a papal-run cyberpunk scenario. In another area, you've got dinosaurs, you've got fantasy, you've got science fiction, you've got horror, you've got everything you could ever imagine. It had an interesting game system, and it had a unique feature. If you did something particularly creative or entertaining, or a particularly good use of a skill or something, you could be handed a card. I don't remember what they were called, something like drama cards. And each card had a trope or a bonus or something to that effect that you could use when thematically appropriate. In many ways, it kind of predated the inspiration system of current Dungeons and Dragons, and it was used in much the same way. The cards were not needed for gameplay, really, but they made it more entertaining. Torg had a reboot a couple years ago, but it had problems. And the biggest problem was that it decided to release all of its supplements in large numbers rapidly. By the time I got to playing Torg, there were so many splat books, as they're called, there's no way I could even begin to get them all, because it would just been too much money. And by that point, you almost needed them all. But it released them so fast, so close together, they outsold their own popularity. Or they undersold their own popularity. They outdistributed their popularity, and people just gave up on it because they couldn't keep up. So, we know that the clear loser, despite being an excellent product and a very good game, was Torg. Rifts has been in constant production since it was released 29 years ago. Shadowrun has been in constant production with a small clicky base hiccup since its release 30 years ago. So who wins? Palladium has not changed the Rift system. They haven't rebooted anything. They haven't redone anything. It's been the same game system ever since 1990. They just added new supplements, new world books, new dimension books, new, all sorts of... That's not even counting the Rifter, which is their little... Not quite a magazine, not quite a supplement that they put out all the time. Shadowrun has had 6 editions, counting the one that was just released, but it's also had several video games. And there are some people who claim that the movie of quality called Bright was inspired by Shadowrun, or if it wasn't, it needs to be. So overall, in terms of popularity, I'd kind of have to give it to Shadowrun. The first, the longest lasting, and the winner of the cross-genre wars. I'd like to thank you for tuning in. Don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe, hit the bell icon so you know when I've gone live, which really and truly, by the time you get the message, I'll probably be done, because I tend to do these videos for only about 10 to 15 minutes. Now, next time I do one, I will probably be discussing 1 or 2 of the older systems from back then. Why I like them, why I may not have liked them, and what use are they now. Okay, I'd like to thank you for tuning in, and have a wonderful day.